In the words of High School Musical, we are all in this together, okay? But I don't remember nothing tingling happened with my body. Like, I really don't. So I don't know. But I'll get back to that. Homeless? Homeless? You what? It's 2020. We're always hearing about somebody being woke or all that extraness, okay? But you actually might be woke, or at the very least waking up, okay? Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about spiritual awakenings, ascensions, and all that, okay? All of that. But first things first, if you are new here, hi. My name is Elle from Intuitive as Elle. I do pick a card, talk about astrology, and do other spiritually related videos. So if that's yours, just drop down, hit the subscribe button. And while you're down there, you might as well hit that bell button so YouTube lets you know what's up, so I can let you know what's up. Okay. All right, we're going to get here to what you guys came here to see. First thing, though, go ahead and address the elephant in the room or the lawnmower outside my window. My dad is mowing the lawn for what feels like the second time today. Like, I swear he mows the lawn like every 2 days. But I just want to give you guys the heads up. So if you hear that outside, I do so apologize. There's nothing that I can do about it. But on to what you guys came here to see. What is a spiritual awakening? Well, I liken a spiritual awakening to being woke. I mean, I know we hear that all the time, but I actually think the term being woke comes from spiritual awakening. I just don't think people really knew that it did or what it meant, and we kind of took it and did our own thing. But I really do think that being woke comes from spiritual awakenings, because you are waking up. You are now woke, okay? You are pushing off old limiting beliefs and old social conditionings and all of that, and that's what I liken to a spiritual awakening. You're beginning to question things, everything, social conditionings, your own personal truths, your behaviors, all of that, and you're basically evolving and experiencing a inner rebirth. Now, I know that I said spiritual awakenings or ascensions, and the reason for that was very deliberate. If you were looking up spiritual awakenings, typically people mix up spiritual awakenings and ascensions. I personally think that there is a distinction between the two, but I'm just letting you know people do mix it up, they overlap and all of that. From what I know of it, or the research that I have done, like I said, I make a distinction between the two, and we're gonna get into that right now. Okay, so I think of a spiritual awakening as that initial waking up. Like, if you've ever seen The Matrix, think of Neo. When he woke up and realized that life wasn't what he thought he was, he couldn't go back to sleep. He was now woke. It's a one in a lifetime thing. You are now woke. There is no going back to sleep. Okay? So to me, that is what a spiritual awakening is. That is that very first waking up and realizing that things are completely different from what you have previously perceived them to be. Whereas I consider an ascension an upgrade. So if we want to think about it via those terms, which I do, a spiritual awakening is an ascension, but an ascension is not a spiritual awakening.
What?
I know that's confusing, but okay. Think of this like this, and y'all gonna have to follow me because I know my mind goes all over the place, but I'm gonna take y'all with me.
No ma'am. No ma'am. No ma'am.
Okay, so think of a square and a rectangle.
What?
I'm sorry. So a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
I did say that right. A rectangle is not a square. Yes, because a square has extra parameters on it. So a square has to have 4 sides, and each side has to be an equal length or whatever. Whereas a rectangle is more of a very broad definition. A rectangle is very specific, okay? A rectangle is just 4 sides. And that's how I think of ascensions and, you know, spiritual awakenings. Spiritual awakenings have very specific parameters, whereas an ascension is more general. So a spiritual awakening is a type of ascension, it's a type of upgrade, but an ascension is not a spiritual awakening. if that makes sense. So when I was first going through my spiritual awakening and I did not know what was happening to me, I did a lot of research to try to figure out what was going on. I came across the term spiritual awakening and I did all my research on what that was and all of that crap. And in my research, I was able to find an article that broke down. They basically said that there were multiple types of spiritual awakenings. There really aren't. It really just kind of is one type of spiritual awakening, but I'm going to put that information out to you because I think that it really broke down into detail the different things that people experience in spiritual awakenings, because everybody has a different type of spiritual awakening, or, you know, everybody has a different form of it. So I'm going to put that information out to you. I'm going to drop the actual original article, which is from Loner Wolf. He was a great resource when I was going through my spiritual awakening. So, or they, I think it's a couple that runs it. So I'm going to drop that down. I'm going to drop the specific article and, you know, so you guys can check that out personally. But I will be covering it in a very general way here. So they outlined 5 different types of spiritual awakening. So that's what I'm going to go with. So the first type of spiritual awakening is the awakening of the mind. This is when you have this epiphany or a sudden realization, and that realization changes your life. Like you are no longer able to go back to the old way of thinking. An example of this would be, let's say that you all of a sudden realize that, hey, what I've been doing is conforming to society's expectations of me. You know, you have that thought, that idea in your head, and then you were never able to look at society's expectations the same. You begin to question everything, all of that. Your mind is now awakened. You have had that realization, that epiphany, and you are no longer able to work outside of that epiphany. Another type of awakening they talk about is the awakening of a personality. And this is basically when you begin to shed old toxic habits or old limiting beliefs or people or things that no longer serve you, and you basically become a new person. So this is typically the case of when you look back to the past, you know, such and such years, and you realize you have really completely transformed into this completely different person. Like, you put that thing down, flipped it, and reversed it, okay? Like, you are not the same person you were 5 years ago. You have completely changed your personality, who you are as a person, and you are a better person for it. Then we have the awakening of spiritual energy, i.e. Kundalini. Now, I'm just going to be transparent because that's what I go off of. I'm always going to be transparent and real with y'all, even when y'all don't want to hear it. When it comes to Kundalini awakenings,
I hate to say it. I hope I don't sound ridiculous. I don't know who this man is. I mean, he could be walking down the street. I wouldn't know a thing. Sorry to this man.
That is just not something that I'm going to be able to talk about right now, because when I was doing my research initially, Kundalini did not come up. It was not a thing. That's all I'm going to say. And so my breadth of knowledge as it relates to Kundalini awakenings is not currently there. I would rather not speak on it if I don't know the information. But don't worry, I'm not going to leave you guys hanging. As soon as I know, y'all will know, okay? Y'all will know when I know, okay? But what I will say about this is I feel like they're talking about is basically when you become aware of energies, you know, around you and in your body and all of that thing. I don't know, because once again, some people say that Kundalini awakenings are the same thing as spiritual awakenings, same thing as how people say ascensions or spiritual awakenings. I don't know. From the information that I did glean off of it when I tried to do research on it, it's 2 different things in my personal opinion. But I'm going to do my research on that, and then I will let you guys know, because I'm curious as to whether I went through a Kundalini awakening or not, just because they say Kundalini awakening comes with like physical stuff, as far as like one of the big things they always talk about is you feel like tingling through your body. I have never felt tingling through my body. Like, I went through a lot of stuff. I had a spiritual awakening, and then I had a psychic awakening, you know, is what they call it, when your psychic gifts all of a sudden they leap out. But I don't remember nothing tingling happening with my body. Like, I really don't. So I don't know, but I'll get back to that. Then we have the awakening of the soul, and that is when you are aligned with your life purpose or your soul purpose, i.e. I have done a pick a card video on that, so if you're curious about that and you're interested in seeing if you can figure out what your soul purpose or life purpose is, and you can go ahead and go check that out, see if one of those powers resonates with you. I think at the time I did not make a distinction between a life purpose and a soul purpose. I know better now, so I do make the distinction, but you know, whatever. So it's also you connecting with your spiritual team, your spirit guides, and you connecting with your higher self, which is that basically the soul version of you. I mean, you are a soul, but it's that person at the essence of you. You know what I'm saying? And it's also you understanding inherently that you are a soul having a human experience. You are not a human being having a spiritual experience. That's not what it is.
Come on, tell them. Tell.
And then the last type of awakening that they talk about is the total awakening, i.e. enlightenment, which of course is the main goal, but it also could be a mix of the other awakenings that I've already talked about. But with an enlightenment, it's basically talking about the ego death. And when I say ego, I don't mean how we talk about, oh, he has a big ego, or, you know, any of that. It's not about being egotistical. The ego talks about, like, think Sigmund Freud, okay? The ego talks about yourself and your identity. Okay, I'm sorry, y'all. My memory card kind of got full, but that's what I get for trying to be grown and film multiple videos in one sitting. Okay, back to the ego death. So an ego death is basically that realization that it's no longer about you. It's about us as a collective. Society has raised us to believe that we are separate and isolated, and that's just not the case. It's the case of we are all one consciousness. Like, that's what you hear about when people say consciousness or mass consciousness or blah, blah, blah. It's basically us saying that it is not just about one person. When you do good, the whole collective does good, you know, and vice versa. Like, when you raise your vibrations, you allow space for others to raise their vibrations through you. And it's about us as a goal. Like, in the words of High School Musical, we are all in this together, okay? But because we are taught to believe that we are separate and isolated, in turn we end up suffering and not living the life that we are meant to live. So when there's an ego death, that is when we are able to basically go back to unity with the collective or with the consciousness. So it's at this point that you're probably trying to figure out why spiritual awakenings occur or what triggers them. Well, what I will say about it is that spiritual awakenings occur when it's time for us to transform. So it's kind of like a way of our soul maturing or transforming or us becoming our best self. Now, one thing that I want to say is that a spiritual awakening can be very traumatic. Like, I know there's this stigma, especially like on social media, about, oh, it's beautiful to be awake and you're not woke yet. Woo, child, you ain't living life. And that's just not the case. Spiritual awakenings can be very traumatic because basically you are being forced to change. You are basically changing your entire lifestyle from a way that you were previously used to it being. It can be very disorienting. You know, it's something that you have to grow into. I think in another video, I likened spiritual awakenings or ascensions to working out. If you were trying to build muscle, you basically have to, when you're working out, like say you're strength training or whatever, you basically have to tear the muscle or stretch the muscle to the point where it tears, and then that muscle has to heal over and grow, and then you do that over and over again until the muscle is where you want it to be at, or until it's stronger. And that is what a spiritual awakening is. You are literally tearing your body, your body, your soul, your mind, all of that is breaking down until it could be the strongest that it could be. So it is not a beautiful process. Now, saying all this, there are some people that don't wake up at all. They don't hit a spiritual awakening. And there are some people who have easier spiritual awakenings than other people. It really depends on how exactly it was triggered. Now, I have only read about 3 ways. I know that there are probably multiple ways, but I have only read about 3 ways. One way is that a spiritual teacher can trigger a spiritual awakening. The second way is that you could naturally mature spiritually, and that could trigger your awakening. And the third way is that you were forced into it. Like, you were shoved headfirst into a spiritual awakening. What you gonna do about it, you know? And that is via something traumatic or triggering happening in your life, a sudden life experience. Some examples of this triggering moment, which I will list right here, I'm just going to read it off: a terminal diagnosis, old age, a near-death experience, a physical accident, the loss of a loved one, a romantic breakup, the destruction of your home or homeland, suicidal depression, or the complete loss of your faith or religion. And this is where I especially highlighted a dark night of the souls, or the dark night of the souls. If you don't know what a dark night of the souls is, baby, you are lucky, you is blessed. And you don't even understand how, because the dark night of the souls is a spiritual depression, and it's unlike the other depression, because it's not even just the case of I'm depressed. It's really like you are looking for the meaning of life and you just really can't find it. Like, you were questioning everything. You feel disconnected from the divine. You have no faith. It's dark, okay? That's all I'm gonna say, is dark. And I personally know, and I will personally cover this, because that is what triggered my spiritual awakening. And so I will speak on this in a later video. But just to give you guys a heads up, those are the 3 ways that it could be triggered. But saying all of that, I don't want you to be afraid of having a spiritual awakening. Though it can be traumatizing while you are in that moment, it's still something that should be, or you should be excited about, just because with a spiritual awakening, you basically are becoming your best self eventually, and it leads to a more fulfilling, more joy-filled, more happy, thriving life. So before I get into the stages of a spiritual awakening, and if you are looking at me and I'm looking at you, and you have not liked, you have not subscribed, fam.
Let me tell you something, sweetheart. I don't know how y'all do where you from, but let me tell you something. Where I'm from, we don't do like that.
Stop playing out here in these streets, okay? I don't know why y'all like this. Why I always gotta tell y'all why? Y'all know the deal. Please, okay, please. Now that we got that out of the way, I'm gonna talk about the stages of a spiritual awakening. Now, I have seen something as complex as there being several stages. I have seen something as complex as there being 4 stages. I'm not gonna focus on that, because you know, I'm not a basic type chick, but I'm all about simplicity and all that. We trying to make it as simple as possible so you guys can retain this information. And so I'm not gonna tell you in the 7 steps or the 4 steps. So we're just gonna wipe that off the board. We're gonna focus on 3 steps. You heard me, I'm narrowing it down to 3 steps. Okay? Now, I have often thought of a spiritual awakening, or I have always likened it to a transformation. And when I think of transformations, I think of caterpillars turning into butterflies. And so that is what we are going to focus on right now in these 3 stages. So the first stage I'm going to talk about is the caterpillar stage, or the stage of trauma, or the trigger. Okay, so at this stage, you are a caterpillar minding your business, crawling on trees, just living your life. Bless you, Peanut. Why do you keep sneezing? Bless the babes. Okay. And you know that you need to change. You know there's stuff that you need to shift, but you really have not gotten around to doing it. And there comes the intervention, whether it's divine intervention, whatever it is, there comes the intervention. Here comes your tower moment. If you are somebody that is into tarot, okay, there's something that happens that triggers this, or something that basically suddenly happens that forces you to change, you know, the way that you were going. And so then you feel lost, you feel confused, you feel dissatisfied with life and all of that crap. Then we move on to the second stage, the stage of the cocoon. And you're moving to the seeking. And when I say seeking, I mean seeking answers, okay? So in this cocoon stage, much like a caterpillar, you go inward, okay? You isolate yourself so that you can transform, or so that you can begin transforming. So it is in this stage that you are looking deep within yourself and figuring out what you need to change, what you need to leave behind, how you need to be moving forward. You begin to unlearn all your social conditionings while trying to figure out what your own personal truth is, what resonates with you. You question everything. You isolate yourself. You try new things like meditation or spirituality. You lose friends. You learn about yourself. You heal. You seek deeper meaning to yourself, to life, to all the philosophical questions that we typically have. You work on mindfulness. You work on deep shadow work. You work on inner child work, healing, and just deep introspection. And then the final stage that we have of the spiritual awakenings, or what I've deemed the final stage, is, wait, I really want to see who's paying attention. Can y'all guess what the final stage is? Drop down right now and tell me what the final stage of the spiritual awakening that I got for y'all is. If you said the butterfly stage, or the stage of being, you were correct. You were paying attention. Gold star for you. Like, look at you paying attention, listening to me, okay? Now, the butterfly stage, you know, you have released yourself from that cocoon. You are now free. You are flying. You are thriving, okay? The butterfly stage, or the stage of being, is about integrating all the things that you learned in that seeking stage. You know what I'm saying? And you have a connection with the divine, your higher self, the energies that be, the collective, all of that. And that is basically what I have summed up to be the stages of spiritual awakening. Now, I really struggled about whether I wanted to talk about the symptoms of a spiritual awakening, just because, homeless doggy? Homeless doggy? Homeless? Homeless? You, what? You gonna be homeless? No, I'm asking. Okay. Sorry, y'all, I really have to keep stopping because my dad is outside the window and people keep stopping him, so it's taking longer than it should. So let me go ahead and wrap this up. As far as the symptoms go, I really just want to make its own personal video because there were so many symptoms that I found. So I'm going to do a video completely, entirely dedicated to the symptoms of a spiritual awakening, ascension, whatever you want to call it. There will be its own video. So don't forget to subscribe for that. But I don't like to be a tease.
Bye, Felicia.
Who had been saying that? Who said that? Who said that?
Well, I don't try to be a tease.
I said what I said.
So I'm just gonna go ahead and give you guys some really basic symptoms for if you have spiritual awakening, just for the sake of rounding out this video. And where am I gonna put that? Where am I gonna put that? I'm just gonna throw it in right here. Okay, so once again, these are not all the symptoms. I've seen something as big as 101 symptoms you have. Spiritual awakenings or ascensions affect you physically, mentally, spiritually, all of that. And so it will be its own dedicated video. Don't forget to subscribe. But if you have any questions, don't be afraid to drop down and put those questions. If you think you are going through a spiritual awakening, you know, go ahead and comment down below and I will get back to you. I will let you know. I also will drop a resource that is basically a test to see if you are going through your spiritual awakening. And of course, that is via Lone Wolf 2, but I will drop that in the description box in the comment section so you guys can have that resource. But like I said, if you want something more personalized, you can just go ahead and comment and I will get back to you. But for right now, that is all that I have for you. But before you click off this video, because I know y'all ain't about to do y'all girl like that, if you are seeing me, hearing me, feeling me, okay, go ahead and like. Okay, go ahead and subscribe for more awesome content. Once again, my name is Elle from Intuitive as Elle. My back hurt. Once again, my name is Elle from Intuitive as Elle, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.